Don't be nervous. I'm going to try to ask you guys all really hard questions. Just kidding. Okay, well, good morning to everybody who is jumping on. So excited to have another webinar. We missed last week because last week was Canada Day. So we missed last week. So unfortunately, but we had a lot of fun on Canada Day, and I hope that you guys did too. Okay, I am just setting things up right here. And okay, so everyone, again, thank you. As always, if you've been here before, you're going to hear this again, but as always, please ask questions. You can put in the chat here. I've let our panel know that there's a chat button, so they can talk to you in the chat as well. So if you have some questions in there, put them in there. Put the questions in the Q&A button as well. And we will get to all the questions, hopefully, today, if we can. We have just a fantastic panel, so I'm glad that everyone could join us. So today, this webinar, as always, is brought to you by Elevate Aviation. And Elevate Aviation is a nonprofit organization that is trying to get more women into aviation. And of course, we're inclusive to everyone. And so we have a lot of men that are involved as mentors and as mentees as well, and trying to get more people into aviation, even though aviation, as we all know it right now, is on a little bit of a pause. But we're all really hoping that that pause comes to an end very quickly. We do many things at Elevate Aviation, including bursaries and tours and speaking engagements, but we truly believe in mentorship. And so, as always, if you are looking for a mentor to learn more specifically today about drones or anything in aviation, or if you want to become a mentor, if you are an expert in the field or you're just in the field and learning, but you still want to share some of that knowledge, you can become a mentor. So just email us or go on our website and become a mentor or become a mentee. We are also starting, I just want everyone to know, we're starting a membership site. And so we're going to invite you all to join in on that membership site when we get it up and going. And that will help us with things like the Elevate Aviation Learning Center that we have in Edmonton and was supposed to start in Calgary in April, but of course, because of COVID, it's delayed. But we bring people, including students and adults, into the airport behind the scenes for a week-long exploration of aviation. And the people who want to be in aviation after they come through our learning center, the success of them wanting to be in aviation, we're at 77%. So it's going to help us with things like that. But enough about all that. Today, we were talking about drones. And so I want to introduce the panel. I don't know much about drones myself, so this is going to be an incredible learning experience for me, and I hope it is for you. One of the things that I did learn talking to our panelists before today was that they are creating highways in the skies for drones. If you're not familiar with the term highways in the skies, you might not be in aviation, and that's okay. But I am an air traffic controller. I'm off right now on a term doing a lot of this stuff, but Edmonton Terminal is where I worked. And of course, we have highways in the skies there in the terminal environment and all of the air traffic control. But I can't wait to talk about that and get into the similarities and much more. So first, I want to introduce you around the table here. We have Sarah Spry. Hello, Sarah.
Hi.
So Sarah, good morning. Sarah is a regulator and teacher at the Waterloo Wellington Flight Center. Mary Lee is from Air Matrix, Highways in the Sky. We're going to talk about that a little bit later. Jeremy Green is a police officer, the first police officer we've ever had on our webinar, a police officer at the Waterloo Regional Police Service, and he runs the drone program there. Hi. Hello, Jeremy.
Hi, Kendra. Thanks for having me.
No problem. Thank you for being here. And we have Katiana, who also works at the same police department, and she is one of the pilots for the drones. So hopefully you guys don't get any questions that are too difficult here today. So
we're still learning.
Yeah, it's incredible how the drone, how it's just gone from what is a drone to drones are taking over, maybe? I don't know. I don't know, but so just want to jump into it here. And Sarah, I want to start with you. So like I said, Sarah is a teacher at the Waterloo Wellington Flight Center. And can you just explain, Sarah, we'll kind of go around, do a little introduction here with everyone. Can you explain what it is you do? Do you teach people from the start? Like you take a drone out of a package and say, here, we're going to learn how to fly this thing?
So we can do that. First and foremost, we teach people regulation. So what is required to fly? How do you fly safely? How do you get registered to fly your drone? Rules have kind of been changing over the last couple years. So it's been difficult for members of the general public. Sorry. It's been difficult for members of the general public to kind of keep up with that. So we like to teach regulation and how to keep people safe. We teach manned aviation as well. So we try to combine the two safely and teach that to everyone. So we can teach people how to fly their drones. For the most part, drones are becoming easier and easier to fly. Some people, like Jeremy, I'm sure will show you, is you can fly it from a tablet. So it's no longer just those kind of finger controls. So it's becoming easier for people to fly. So it's more about regulation and making sure that you're flying safely.
Okay, it's interesting. I'd like to learn some of that. I should take the course myself, actually. So Mary, can you I just want to introduce you here. So tell us about Air Matrix.
Thank you, Kendra, for having us on. Air Matrix is a company that builds highway in the sky and also provides the traffic management as well. So, I mean, analogous to, you know, like you say, so just assume the fact that, you know, in the early days when cars were coming onto the land, I mean, when cars was first invented, they basically went wherever they wanted. But as more and more cars come on the road, we need a system to enable them to kind of operate kind of, you know, togetherness and to ensure the fact that, you know, that there's no accident and so forth. So what our company does is we actually build these highway in the sky and kind of provides what we call traffic light management in terms of like we help them define what path they need to go on, as well as manage traffic, you know, when there's multiple drones that need to fly in a shared airspace. And that's what we do.
Okay. Jeremy, tell me about the police station. Like, why do you have drones there, and how did you become the master of the drones at your department?
Well, it started back in 2018 when our department looked into using drones to help us do our job. And actually, as we discussed earlier, one of the most common questions we get is it used for police surveillance to watch me in my house and watch what I'm doing all day? And no, our primary purpose for using drone technology is to reduce the time and increase the quality of imaging that we do at collision scenes. So probably about 85% of our usage is collision scene investigation. The rest of the time we're using it for missing people searches. So someone who's elderly perhaps and is gone missing, or a child that has gone missing, we can use drone technology and the infrared cameras, especially at nighttime, to look for these missing people. So surveillance, and actually in the last 2.5 years, I don't think we've actually used it at all for any sort of surveillance technology. It is something that it's possible down the road, but that's not our primary goal, and that's not what we're using it for at our agency. I got into it because I actually have a background in aviation. I actually got a pilot's license when I was younger, before policing. My uncles, my dad are all pilots, and I actually had that bug in me since I was a little kid. I ended up going to policing, but it's kind of nice I did a full circle, came back to having a little bit more aviation in my life with the drone program. So I've had a lot of fun with it. So it was nice to tie in policing and aviation at the same time.
You said the bug word.
Yes.
You know, they say if you get bitten by the aviation bug, that's it. You don't want anything else. And you hear that by so many people.
Absolutely. And the other part is I live right beside the airport in town here. So it's every day I'm looking up in the sky and seeing the airplane. So yeah, the bug definitely stays with you for life.
Okay. Katya, so you are a pilot of drones. Do you have any love of aviation, or completely separate here?
Completely separate. I have no background in aviation. I mean, I've been a passenger in planes many, many times, but no knowledge of it. I just thought that the technology that is used is going to save us so much time. and of course accuracy as well, and what we do in traffic. So the measurements that we can take from the technology that the drone does provide has already saved me hours and hours and hours of time on the road. Also just searching for people out, whether they're a danger to the public or people that are in danger due to pre-existing illnesses, lost in the woods, etc. It's really been very helpful, and I do see a future. I did see a future, and I definitely do see still a future in this technology, and I know that it's only going to advance. So of course I do want to be part of that.
So I'm curious, hear me as a police officer and say, hey, we have this drone program, I want to be part of it and learn how to fly a drone, or did you have the drone as the hobby? Did you want to do that first and then bring that into policing?
No, actually, I was introduced at work. I was asked whether that would be something I'd be interested in, as I was already using the previous tool that we've been using for decades in measuring our scenes. So it just made sense for me to be introduced to the new technology. And of course, I jumped into that for my own benefit. And I am thinking about actually getting my own personal one. I don't have one yet, but it's definitely in my future.
Oh. I think there's probably a lot of police officers that would jump at the chance to be in this drone world in their own departments. So
yes.
and as we go on, it will happen. So Sarah, if somebody, let's start really simple. If somebody wants to be a drone pilot, what do they do? Do they call around to local flying clubs? Like what do you do? What's the first step?
There's kind of a bunch of first steps. It kind of depends where you start. So if you start by going out and buying a drone, and you can virtually buy one anywhere now, it kind of depends on the size of your drone. So anything under 250 grams does not need to be registered, and you don't need to have a license to fly that. So I've got little ones back here. I'm not sure if you can see. This is one, for instance.
Spy drone.
This little tiny thing. It has no cameras or anything on it. It's kind of really hard to fly. The battery is really short lifetime. So this one, you don't need a license to fly, and you don't need to register your drone. So once you get above 250 grams, all the way up to 25 kilograms, you would need to register your drone with Transport Canada. It's kind of like a license plate for a car. So that registration is only $5. You go onto Transport Canada's website and you put a little sticker on your drone. Along with that, you need to figure out what license you need to fly. So for the basic license, you need to be 14 years of age or older. So if you have younger children who are thinking of flying, they would have to be with a licensed pilot until they're 14, and then they can get their own license under the basic certification. And then we also have an advanced certification. With that one, you need to be 16 years of age or older. And the difference between the two basically is where you want to fly. How close to airports do you want to fly? We talk about controlled and uncontrolled airspace. Some of our viewers might not know what that means, and that's what we're here for, to take that course so that you understand where that is and where it's safe to fly. So basic license allows you to fly in uncontrolled airspace and away from people. So 30 meters or more away from people and never over top of people. And then your advanced certificate allows you to fly within that distance and or over top of people, depending on what type of a drone that you have. And the drones get into different levels. So you may have one that is licensed to fly over top of people, or you may have one like this one behind me here. So this one's a little bit bigger. It would need to be registered. This one can't fly over top of people, but it can fly close to people. So within or up to that 30-meter distance of people. So it just kind of depends on your hardware and what you want to do, where you are. If you just want to fly in your backyard, you have to know if that's uncontrolled airspace. Sorry about the noise.
It's okay, you're at work.
Yeah, so you just kind of have to know where you want to fly, and there's lots of apps and lots of tools out there. I'm sure Mary can comment about this as well, that help you know where you are, if you're in controlled or in uncontrolled airspace. And then we offer courses on those to make sure that you can go online to Transport Canada's website and pass your basic license or your advanced license. And then we kind of get into flying and start to enjoy the fun and knowing where we're flying and knowing how to stay safe.
So you say they're getting easier to fly. Are they I've never flown one actually. Are they pretty easy?
It depends what you get. Like I said, that little tiny one that I have, the controller is this big. So you're just flying with two little sticks, and you kind of have to be on them at all times to keep it straight and level. Jeremy can probably show you that as you get into more complex drones, you start to fly them with tablets. So you're actually just touching the screen with a pen and telling it to launch. So it depends on what type of a drone you get, what type of systems that are built into it to be able to fly. So the more money you spend, the easier it is, or the different type of drone that you get. So they used to be really hard to fly, but technology has come a long way, and they're becoming a lot easier to fly for sure. A lot of them will just hover, and you can take your hands right off the controller and it will stay still even with the wind. So yeah, technology is a great thing in taking us leaps and bounds ahead.
Wow. Okay, we are going to see Jeremy's in a few minutes here. There's a question for you here, though. With the new rules, is there still a requirement to have two-person operation of a UAV?
Not necessarily. So I think what he means, or she, I'm not sure who that came from, but I think what they're referring to is having visual line of sight on the drone at all times. So all of the regulations right now state that you have to have your drone within sight. So if you're the pilot, you can be flying as long as you're watching your drone at all times. So if you're spending a lot of your time staring at the screen or looking down at your controllers, you can't be scanning the sky for other aircraft. So in that case, if you need to be looking at something, you'll need a visual observer. But no, it's not always required that you need two people. If you're competent enough or you feel comfortable enough that you can be watching your drone and not your controller, then that's acceptable as well.
Okay. Okay. So let's just move on to Mary for a moment. So Mary, when you said that you were creating or have created highways in the sky for the drones, I was very excited because I'm very familiar with that. Just to talk a little deeper into that for the people who aren't familiar with it, like we have highways in the sky for airplanes. We've had them for years and years and years. So when people are looking up at the sky and they're seeing airplanes, those airplanes aren't just flying kind of willy-nilly all over the sky. There's a purposeful route that they are flying, and sometimes air traffic controllers can change that route and take them off that highway and give them direct. And direct, of course, is where everyone is more and more now, not the VOR to VOR so much anymore. But tell us more about the highways in the skies for the drones.
And I think you've basically summarized the main functionalities of our software as well, right? So we basically build a grid system, and it's a three-dimensional grid system. So it's basically there's separation between where drones can go, and if you're thinking about a grid, it basically has longitude and latitude, and it enables the drone to actually fly on those grids. So to your point, it is not flying willy-nilly; it's flying within a certain path. And our technology also enable the drones to basically fly within the same, I guess, airspace. I think that's pretty critical. When you're thinking about planes, right now, there's a lot of space that plane can fly. But you're thinking about drone operation, drones are, the biggest business application of drones are going to be in more urban areas. Think of like delivery, think of it as inspection, as you mentioned. With everything going on right now, with congestions going up, with time being critical, and with COVID, with contactless delivery becoming a way more critical component, this is going to become more prevalent. So it is critical for us to have these kind of control laneways to manage the, I'm going to say, exponential growth in drone, because I know tons of companies now are thinking about that as a way to kind of enhance their logistics, enhance their ability to deliver their services and so forth. And, both for economic value, but also for social good. A lot of the use cases that we're doing, and Sarah's school is actually helping us manage that. A lot of it is for social.
Uh-oh. We lost Mary. Okay, well, we'll wait for Mary to come back on. I'm sure she'll be back here in a second.
Good. Let me think of even COVID, right? With what's happened. Hi, did I just knock out? Did I get out?
You did, but you're back again, yeah.
Okay, so sorry. So did I just basically say, what part did I leave? Anyways, so
Oh,
I was
so
talking about use
go ahead.
cases, right?
Mhm.
Right. So I guess what we're saying is that this enables, I guess, commercialization of drones in urban areas. So because the volume of traffic is going to be analogous to, I wouldn't cars, not so much, to plane where there's going to be a lot of space around. And that's why we thought it was critical for us to build this exact similar infrastructure, basically laneways that the drones can operate, so that we can probably have a lot more drones up there, and and do social good and do economic good as well.
So you must work closely with Transport Canada and Nav Canada. And for those who don't know, Canada is the traffic controllers, has the air traffic controllers. So, and no, the air traffic controllers aren't with the red Rons on the runway. That's a whole other subject that people think. But so you must work pretty closely with them, right? And then are you expecting that the air traffic controllers will actually control these drones on the highways, or will there be a whole different set of drone air traffic controllers, or will it just be so automatic you don't need controllers?
And I think Sarah can probably help me answer that question. So we are part of a task force that has been put together by NavCan and Transport Canada, and I think there's a lot of thinking going into what is going to be the air traffic management system. So I don't think there is going to be there are no policies at this point in time, but hopefully but right now it is their priority to think about how to kind of manage that, whether it's something that they have a lot of times is manpower as well, right? Whether they have the manpower or not to do it, or whether they basically have the accountability to make the policies and procedures, but maybe another entity would have the responsibility to actually go and implement that. One of the beauty of our system is that it is autonomous. So we actually, and I'm not, an air traffic controller or MI pilot, so I'm not sure how the air traffic control works. So for a drone, if they want to come on our lane, they basically go on our app and they go on, and we give them a path, exactly that, from A to B, we give them a path, and then basically they go that path, and if there's, to your point, emergencies or crash or whatever, we can redirect their path as well. So to the extent that, is that going to be controlled by the municipalities or by Nav Canada? I think those are the questions that are going to come up, but the volume is going to be that much greater. So I think that's going to be a consideration in terms of them coming up with policy and standards.
Yeah, we don't really want drones crashing right above our heads.
Right.
So I can just see how, as more and more drones come, more delivery drones, and it's going to be interesting. So currently, and this is for whoever wants to answer, are these type of drones right now, are any of them, are they just all outside of controlled aerospace, or are any actually starting to ask for clearance into Class C or different classes of aerospace right now? Anybody know? Sarah, you maybe?
I can answer that for you.
Yeah.
Yes, they're flying in controlled airspace. So right now you just need to get permission, and there's a form right on Nav Canada's website that you can fill out. I'm sitting at CYKF today, and if you wanted to fly here, if I wanted to take a drone out here, Jeremy has flown his drone here before. You fill out that form with Nav Canada, and they look at it and they kind of set it all up with you, and you can go and fly. You can fly in restricted airspace. You just need to get their permissions to do so. So the only thing that's kind of hard to figure out right now is beyond visual line of sight. When we're taking these drones and we're flying them long distances, when we're getting into pilots who are actually sitting indoors and flying a drone that is flying, I don't know, halfway across the province, doing deliveries or whatnot, that becomes a little bit of an issue. And like Mary was saying, I think the way that we look at airspace may need to change, right? With drones coming into play, we need to give everyone a space, and it'll be interesting. There's a lot of people trying to figure it out right now. Unmanned traffic management is a hot topic. Sorry about that, all.
That's okay.
Yeah, traffic management is a huge topic right now, and there's lots of panels working with Transport Canada, Nav Canada, to try to figure it out, how we're going to fly these drones safely beyond visual line of sight, and what that traffic management is, and how we share the sky with everyone.
Okay, so one of the questions that's on here, actually, it's Jeremy, I'll address this to you, or Katia. Is the police department allowed to fly beyond the line of sight?
So we are following the same regulations that anyone else that owns a drone has. We don't have any special exemptions. We can apply for them, but we still have to follow the same rules. So if I wanted to fly beyond my visual line of sight, I'd have to get someone like Katya to go up the road and watch for my drone to make sure we maintain that visual sight. We follow all the same regulations. We have the same registration. We go through the same licensing. I mean, in unique scenarios, we can ask permission to fly in areas where some civilians may not be able to fly, depending on whatever emergency we have. But for the most part, yeah, everything is exactly the same as anyone else registering and flying a drone.
Okay, so let's talk about the police department here and drones. And like I said to you guys earlier, someone actually called me the other day and said, hey, you know, the police department and drones, that means they're going to be spying on me all the time. And there's actually a question here. Okay, there's a question here that will lead into this. As a roofer, I absolutely love using a drone to measure roofs and look at the dangers before I have to climb onto a roof. That's pretty good. On the other hand, we were camping in the mountains recently, and some person couldn't stop flying his drone around the campsite. Beyond annoying, but he finally ran out of battery. So like anything else out there, positive and negatives to the drone. So thank you for that comment. But like, what happens? Like, how do you stop people? Like, what are all the rules with the policing? How do you stop people if someone has a drone and they're bugging you? And are you guys using them to spy on people?
So no, we're not using drones to spy on people. It's a tool that we use. I mean, down the road, there is a potential that we can use it for some sort of surveillance. It's not in our business plan to do that as of yet, but it'd be just like any other surveillance tool, like a camera or officers in an unmarked vehicle watching through binoculars. We would have to get the proper judicial authorization to do that. So it's not something we would just randomly one day say, I want to spy on, you know, Sarah's house and go fly over and see what she's up to. It's nothing like that. That's not legal. That's not what we do. We need a warrant or something to authorize that. And B, we don't have the time for that. We're using it for collision scenes. That's our primary purpose. And for missing persons, we're busy enough doing that in itself. It's not something that we're planning on using in the near future at all. So no, it's not a spy tool. We can't see through walls. We've had that question where people think we can fly up and see through building walls with our cameras and stuff. That no, we don't have that crazy technology. I don't even know if it exists. Like maybe be a better question for someone in the military, but no, that's not what we're using it for. And yeah, we're about 80% collisions and about 15% is missing persons. And the last bit is training and public events and stuff. So we're not using it at all for surveillance in our agency. I mean, some other agencies might be, but ours definitely are not.
I was trying to learn a little bit about drones before this panel. So I was just watching some YouTube videos, and one of them said that they think that the future of policing with drones is that a drone will be able to actually come over and stop you somehow and arrest you. Do you see that as the future? Like,
maybe after we retire.
Yeah, probably not in our lifetime. I mean, I don't see the old-fashioned police officer being replaced by something flying, but I mean, technology is changing at a rapid pace. So, I mean, anything's possible. I just don't see that. And I think you kind of touched on it earlier about how we're dealing with similar complaints like that question about from the roofer there. You can still be investigated for criminal offense, for example, criminal harassment. If you're following someone, stalking someone, flying into their property, watching them, what they're doing, it'd be the same as if you like held a camera over their fence and recorded what they're doing. There's an element of harassment there. And if you're into the point where it's a criminal harassment investigation, it doesn't matter if it's a drone or if it's you going on their property, it still could be considered a criminal offense and will be investigated by a police department. Drone complaints that are, you know, for example, flying over people's property without a criminal element are usually investigated by Transport Canada. But if there's any sort of criminal or provincial trespassing breaches, then the police department will investigate those.
what's the chances of even finding who's flying the drone?
Well, sometimes it's difficult, but the thing with drones is the battery life is usually 15, 20, 25 minutes. So, I mean, we work 12-hour shifts. We can probably just wait for the battery to die and follow it to where it lands. Most people want them to come back, right? So we'll just end up following it back to wherever the operator is. And oftentimes the person standing right back where it comes home and lands. A lot of them have a return home and land feature. So usually it's not terribly difficult to locate the operator. There are some technologies that I've looked at where you can actually trace the radio signals and try to find out where the actual signal from the device is going. So there's some different technologies we can use as well. And also if they're following the regulations, as in they're registering their device, if it, for example, crash lands somewhere, we can just run the serial number and find out who the registered owner is and investigate that way. So there's lots of different avenues we can go depending on the offense or possible offenses that are being committed. But we absolutely take them seriously and investigate them, especially if it's a criminal offense.
Okay, I think, Trevor, that will answer your question. Someone brought in a question about the privacy concerns of citizens. So, Katia, what happens when do you go to use the drone? Do you get a call and, you know, the next thing you know, and we forgot, Jeremy, I know you have the control there. I don't know if you want to hold that up. Katia, I'm assuming you would go over and you know, if you get a call for an accident that you want to get the drone out there for, you would go and get this and maybe walk us through what actually happens.
Yeah, so when we get a call, let's say an accident, a major accident. So if it's, you know, anybody's gotten very, very hurt or unfortunately lost their lives, I'll go back to the office and I'll grab my equipment. I'll always let my inspector know. I'll let Jeremy know, being the coordinator. Of course, I have to have authority to do that first, so I have to make sure that everything's in line. I check the weather, so METAR. I have to make sure that the environment is the safe one to fly into. If it's a controlled airspace, of course, I can't pre-plan this, so I don't have paperwork ready for it. It usually happens, you know, when you least expect it. So I call the control towers and I get permission through them to make sure that there's nothing in the airspace that could get in the way. I don't want to get in the way either. When the environment is a safe one, I locate a flat area with no, let's say, trees or telephone poles or anything in the way. I need a neat open area to fly in. And just as an extra, I always send a little message out to the media to let people know that I am in the area flying the drone, so that if they don't want to be videotaped by accident, of course they can leave the area. But I always ensure that the public is far away. Usually when we have a scene, it's closed off anyways, with other police officers and barriers. So it's usually a controlled space. At that point, I create a grid with the tablet, which I'm sure Jeremy is going to demonstrate. And yeah, I go up and I fly my drone and get a nice aviated photo or video, and then I process it through there.
So sorry.
Yep, go ahead.
So what this grid, this is you're flying back and forth in that area that you just have on there, Jeremy?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, and it's completely controlled.
Yeah, so I just set up a grid pattern there. Most of how this device works is pre-planning a flight. So most of the actual flying is autonomous. So we pre-plan, so you'll see a grid here. So this is, for example, I'm looking for a missing person in that farm, and you'll see the actual, so this is not actually the drone flying, so don't think that I'm sitting here on a webinar actually trying to fly a drone. So Sarah's kind of looking with one eyebrow raised there. But this is just
You're in trouble.
So this software will simulate the actual flight so we can get some training time in the office. So what we can do is at a crash scene or a missing person search, we can pre-plan the route, the altitude that it'll fly at, the direction it flies, the speed, and then we can focus on using the camera to look for the missing person or to look at the crash scene and not worry as much about flying. I mean, we're still watching for other air traffic in the area, watching out for obstructions, but we can set what the maximum and minimum altitude for flight is to make sure we're over top of all the area obstructions like trees. So it's great when you're, especially in high stress situations where you're not so worried about trying to fight the wind or fighting, going around objects and stuff. You're just letting the device fly. And just to kind of expand on that, I'm sure the question will come up eventually, but this is our device in the background. It's a FLIR Sky Ranger R60. It's military grade. It's 2.5 kilos before you add the payload to it. It can fly up to gusts of winds of 90 kilometers per hour. It goes down to minus 30 degrees Celsius. So one of the biggest reasons we went with this device is that we can take it through the winter, no problem, where a lot of devices, they're not recommended below 0 degrees. So if you have a missing person in the middle of winter, a lot of devices we would have to shelf and wait until the warmer temperature. This one, I mean, it'll fly longer than we can stand out in the cold pretty much. It's a fantastic device. And with it being autonomous, it's great to use the infrared and be able to look closely for those heat signatures instead of worrying about the actual flight pattern.
So you may have said this and I missed it, but how far away can the drone be from your actual control pad?
So it's limited to the radio strength from our, we have a base station. So very basically, our tablet is connected via Wi-Fi to a base station, which then converts that signal to a radio antenna signal and then sends it off to our device. So I've had it close to 1 kilometer away at nighttime and still visible with the flashing lights and using ground observers. But for us, we don't really need that range as much. If we need to see further, we usually just go higher, and then we can use our lens. The one on there right now is a 30-time optical zoom with a 20-time digital zoom. So we can see quite far away with it. And then most of our use is grid pattern searches for crash scenes, which usually don't take a huge geographical area. So we don't really need that range. It's more for the military that will use the extended range, but they're not limited to maintaining that visual line of sight. Like they have obviously their own set of rules, which I'm not familiar with because we're just doing the police stuff with it. So, I mean, it has capabilities of doing a lot more than we do with it, but it's a fantastic device.
Wow, this is also interesting. Okay, I'm going to go to a question here from Trevor. Are drones used to inspect aircraft during maintenance in the hangar and for runway airfield inspections at airports in Canada? Does anybody know? No, I think they are. My guess is they are. Like I just from watching things, I think that I've seen drones go up. I don't know what they inspect or how much, but that's definitely a question that we can find out.
I'm sure
Not
they
today.
are. I mean, the use cases are endless, and I've got people telling me every day something that they're using it for. So I'm sure that they are. I'm sure that they're people are trying out new ideas and flying, and you know, mostly if it can save safety, like bridge inspections, you wouldn't need to shut down the highway anymore. You could fly up underneath the bridge to do inspections. So any use case to kind of save time and save a human life from being in a dangerous situation, then people are using them for sure. So saving time and saving humans from being in those crazy situations sometimes are definite use cases. So I can see it. If it saves time, absolutely send a drone out.
Okay, there's another question here that it says, this is for you, Sarah. Is a course mandatory for getting a license?
Courses are not mandatory for getting your license. So everyone needs a license. Even if you're a manned pilot, you need to go through and get these, either the advanced or the basic license, depending on where you're going to fly again. So it's not mandatory that you take a course. However, I'm just going to throw it out there, and obviously some people on this call have taken the courses or the online tests already. They're not super simple. So if you don't know a lot about aviation, and I mean, it even gets into hardware, it gets into meteorology and some questions that you just wouldn't know just getting a drone and taking it out of the package. You have to have aviation knowledge. You have to speak aviation and understand aviation. So courses aren't mandatory. It's highly recommended. You can go online and you can take these tests. They're only $10, either the basic or the advanced. If you don't pass, you can take it again 24 hours later, but it's well worth your time to take a course and to get the understanding. With the advanced license, not only do you have to take the online course online test, afterwards you have to do a flight review. So you have to go to a field with a flight examiner and pass a test, and they're going to ask you more questions, and they're going to have you demonstrate your entire mission. So you need to pass that portion as well.
Well, and I know, again, from being air traffic control, I remember learning about airspace, you know, when we first learned how to be an air traffic controller, and it can be pretty confusing with the upside down pie charts and everything. You know, it can be really confusing to learn about airspace.
And aviation loves acronyms, so.
Yeah, yes, absolutely. Mary, I want to go to you for a second. We talked a little bit about some live testing that was going on in Waterloo before this panel started. Can you tell us what's going on there?
It's actually being planned, so it's not going at this
Okay.
point in time yet. So basically, the region of Waterloo it's a very progressive region. You know, there's a lot of technology hubs there, so they're working with us to build a test site in Waterloo, and from that there will be different use cases, different companies and different organizations that will be utilizing this test case to basically emulate a live ecosystem, like how it would work and so forth. And Sarah's team is actually helping us operate some of those drones. And some of the use cases that we're currently going with is Canada Post wants to do a couple of tests, you know, in terms of understanding the logistic, the customer experience, you know, the operational efficiency. We're dealing with a pharmacy who wants to, you know, distribute or send drugs to long-term care home, which probably, you know, would benefit from contactless delivery at this point in time. We're working with Hydro One, who wants to basically inspect hydro lines. And so, so as you mentioned, there are many, and we're talking to other companies, you know, as well, who really see the value in this, exactly to what Sarah said, in terms of saving time, saving money, and saving lives. And we're also going to be working with the region of Waterloo, and depending on which city, you know, we're going to be utilizing, they'll be actually testing some of their emergency first responder as well, exactly what Jeremy was talking about. So those are actually in the planning stage at this point in time. And we're actually requesting, I think what Sarah said is, we're requesting permission from Transport Canada to enable us to do those tests. And with that, hopefully Transport Canada can see, you know, multiple use cases being utilized at the same time. So kind of emulate a broader live ecosystem in the future, but doing it in a way more controlled environment.
I don't think that the public really understands, like, you know, the big sky theory. There's a big sky out there. Like, we can have two airplanes, like on a midnight shift, there's no airplanes, you know, there's two airplanes in the sky, and those two airplanes could collide without air traffic services. Like, you think, oh, they'll never see each other, right? And then, so then I picture like all these drones going around, and the possibility of just craziness it will happen. So what you're doing just amazes me, and I guess really needs to be done. It's really gonna be interesting to watch. Okay, I have a question for all of you, really. MLA Richard Godfrey is watching here today, and he put a message in here talking about his Strategic Aviation Advisory Council Act that has been passed here in Alberta. So there'll be an aviation council here in Alberta. I wanted to know, do you have one out there? I should know that, but I don't know that. Do you have one? And what do you think the importance of drones on these sort of councils that will liaison with the government? Do you have things that you think are important that those councils should know?
I can only answer. Oh, sorry, Sarah, go ahead.
Go ahead. No, Jeremy, you go ahead.
Okay. I'm just going to cover off the limited knowledge I have of it from the policing standpoint. We do have a provincial committee. We have a number of committees that we have, for like one for traffic collision investigation. We have one for speed enforcement. So one of the ones we have is for using drones in policing. So we do connect with the government, NAV Canada and Transport Canada, to talk about kind of our needs and expectations, and they again give us their needs and expectations. So that's the way we're communicating through the government. But I mean, we have kind of a niche requirements and expectations and stuff. So I don't know if there's something similar kind of civilian side, but that's just for interest sake, I guess, for what we're doing on our end.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thanks, Sarah.
I was just going to mention, we're a part of an organization called Unmanned Systems Canada, and they have a lot of interaction with the government officials, obviously. So they kind of advocate for both. They're talking about recreational people, they're talking about commercial people. COPA is a part of that and has some members in there. So most of the liaisoning is happening that way, and or there is little kind of working groups within the Transport Canada task force that we kind of go through and work through that way. Anyways, that's what we're doing to kind of keep our voice in there. And I know Unmanned Systems Canada has a huge voice to help move things forward.
Okay, yeah, it'll be really interesting to see what happens out here in Alberta with this council, because this is a new thing for Alberta, and you know, just trying to really get aviation booming again out here in Alberta, and how the drones will fit into all that is going to be really interesting. So Katya, I had a question for you. How many drone pilots do you have in the department?
Right now we have 4. 3 of us are within the traffic branch, and the 4th is in the emergency response team. And it really doesn't matter who goes to a call and what type of investigation it is. It really depends on who's working at the time and who would be available for a call out.
Okay. I'm going to take another question from Brian. Is the most popular manufacturer DJI? Are they specialized UAV that the police services uses? So is the DJI the place to go for someone who just wants to have a drone and fly it around? Do you guys know?
I hear a lot about the DJI. I know they have a lot of different models, depending what you are looking for. But yeah, I mean, we're using Sky Ranger for different reasons. We're using it because it's so weather resistant. And of course, us living in Canada, it definitely offers us a lot more flight time. But I think all models have different benefits. It's just what we're looking for at this time.
Okay. Okay, so here's a comment from Perry. Just a statement for you guys to comment on. We've talked about it a little bit already, but with the advent of drone technology, my hope is that the majority of it will be put to good use, such as flying medicine to remote sites, help with search and rescue instead of flying fast food to your house or Amazon delivery. Comment, please. So just to talk about that a little bit further, with the future of drones, like, what do you guys think of the future of drones? Like, where are we going with all this in the future? Do you picture kind of the futuristic movies of like drones coming and dropping off parcels all over the place? Like, what do you guys picture for the future of drones? And will it be good? Will it all be good? Mary?
Should I go first?
Yeah,
I
go
mean,
ahead, Mary.
I mean, like from our perspective, we definitely think there's going to be a huge future for drones. I think as congestions, get more and more, particularly with COVID now, people are afraid of actually, basically taking public transportation. With contactless being a huge part of it, drones are being utilized more and more and more in all over, like all parts of the world for different applications. And there's so many different applications associated with it. And most of it, if you look at what's going on right now, the first and premier use case, it's really about social benefit, and economic benefit obviously will drive the engine because that's a lot of component. But as it relates to, to your point, like, we're flying live organs between hospitals because there's time sensitivity associated with that. We can fly tests so people can get tested in long-term care facilities, and so forth. There's first responders, like you say, fire, traffic accidents, and so forth. And of course, there's going to be the commercial application of it as well. And I think it's no different than anything else, right? It's a tool, it's an enabler. It's actually the people behind it that can have good intentions or bad intentions. And I think with what we're working with in terms of Transport Canada and NAVCAT and so forth, and really the municipalities, that's going to enable these commercialization of drones. They will set the standards and guidelines and ethical rules that will enable them to say yes or no in terms of what's going on. And I really do see that's going to be a big part of the policy and procedures kind of coming down. But so to your point, we are betting that is going to be good. Otherwise, we wouldn't be involved in this. I know, right?
Yeah, and what you're doing there, early on, it's really interesting. And I'll have to hook you up that lady I was telling you about that wants a job with you and see what happens.
Right.
Does anyone else want to comment on that, on the future of drones? What do you think? Sarah, what do you think as far as the schools? Like, okay, here's a question. Are a lot of pilots not going to, well, except for the fact that we're in COVID and what's going on right now, will we lose a lot of pilots, I guess?
I don't know. I think that's looking into a crystal ball, and unfortunately, I don't quite have one of those. There's a big movement to say, you know, drones for good. Unfortunately, drones can get a bad name, and that's just from a couple of poor pilots and poor decision making that's out there. But there's a lot of drones for good, and like I said, you can use a drone for those high risk areas rather than sending a person. And that's as simple as doing a roof inspection, right? How many people have fallen off of roofs and climbing and need to have harnessing now? So if you can quickly send a drone up there, it's so much quicker. So it's really hard for me to tell in terms of pilots. Again, another one that's hard to tell. I can see us maybe going down to one pilot in an aircraft and having a lot of automated systems. Obviously, aircraft have a lot of automated systems already, so possibly we can drop that down to one pilot, and then maybe there's another pilot in office that's also monitoring the flight as it goes. Then we get into human factors, right? And obviously human factors with flying drones is a little bit different than flying aircraft. What we see on the ground and our distance and that type of thing can play with us. Flying at night can play with us. I mean, Jeremy is flying and just going off of the lights at night and trying to tell distances is really hard sometimes. So we start to become more and more reliant on technology, and what does that mean? So I think there's more research that needs to be done in terms of all of that stuff. It's interesting, and I can't wait to see it. I enjoy the technology. I want to see it come forward. But I think it's almost like autonomous vehicles. It has to have that public acceptance as well. So we'll have to see how far the public acceptance of this technology goes. You know, is a pizza going to get delivered to your front door one day? I don't think the public is ready for that. Is the public ready to walk on an aircraft and have no one sitting up front? I don't think the public is ready for that. So
yeah, the pizza might come first in that example, eh?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the comfort level of people flying with unmanned aircraft, I think we're probably a little ways off. How far off do you guys think we are from, you know, that futuristic movie? You know, you picture the drones all over the place, and you know, I saw one example of you get picked up and it drops you off at a station, and then it flies you to whatever country you're in to land you at your hotel. Like, do you think that this is in our future? 20 years, 50?
Well,
We'll
we
be
know
gone.
that there are a lot of companies already kind of producing these types of drones, right? So Uber has a technology out there, and we were speaking actually with a German company who just recently bought you know, these passenger drones as well. I'm actually quite excited about it. You know, I keep saying, I have a parking lot right beside my house that can probably be a good test site, you know, for us to kind of go forth. So it's not as far as you think. Like I think this technology is actually going to be, you know, I think with COVID, particularly with COVID, it's really shrunk, you know, the adoption cycle, and we're really kind of progressing a lot more quicker than we anticipated. And there are many companies out there actually working on larger drones, which has a capacity to carry a patient, you know, has capacity to carry, you know, like a fridge, you know, for live organs that, you know, that needs to go. That's very time sensitive, right? So I would, you know, if I was a betting person, I would say within the next 10 years, I can see that being you know, being the new Fifth Element, you know, if anyone has ever seen that movie.
Wow. Yes. Wow. It's just such a dynamic industry. And we're going to have to close up here, but let's start, Sarah, let's start with you, and we'll just go around here. What do you say to people? Do you want to encourage people to look at drones and to get into drones as a career? A lot of people that watch us later on are cadets that are, you know, trying to figure out what they want to do in life. Is this something that you all recommend people really take a look at for a career when they're sitting there going, what do I want to do with my life?
Yeah, absolutely. So obviously we teach manned pilots here as well as unmanned pilots. And right now I can tell you there's a gap. So most manned pilots kind of want nothing to do with drones. And for some reason, I'm not sure what it is, but there seems to be a gap I don't know, a little bit of a tension or friction in that area. So I'd really like to see the aviation community just start to learn more about this and this technology and the uses for it, and not be fearful. Like, people will still be used, whether it's, I don't know, 50 years in the future where there is no pilots in the aircraft, but pilots are still required. It's now just more in the office. So those jobs don't go away, they just change. And we kind of seen that in the automotive manufacturing, right? So machines came into there, but the jobs just shifted a little bit. So I don't think that's going away, but I'd like to see it be more inclusive. So there's lots of jobs, there's lots of use cases, there is so much technology that goes into it, and developing this, and there's so much that is still unknown out there. So diving in, creating some of this software, figuring out how to fly these beyond visual line of sight. If they sense an aircraft, what should they do? All of that stuff right now is trying to be figured out. So it's a new and evolving kind of industry, and I think it's exciting. So I strongly encourage people to get into it, go and fly, obviously with a licensed pilot. Try it out. It's fun technology, and it's not as frustrating as some people may think. And as long as you're flying safe and you understand the regulations, which if you don't, please come and see me, and we can help you through that. But yeah, get involved in it. There's so many careers. You don't necessarily need to be flying one to be involved in the drone industry.
Oh, that's interesting. Okay, Katya, how about you? This is what you do for your career. You fly drones for the police department. Is that something that you want to encourage other people to do?
Absolutely, it's a very handy tool. A lot handier than I expected. I didn't expect this much benefit, really, and time saving for sure. But I mean, even if you don't want to use it as a tool in a future career, I mean, it's such a great hobby. I'm thinking of getting one myself, just for here at home and flying over some fields. Of course, I'd still get the course to know what your limits should be. But absolutely, I mean, it's a tool that you should at least get some knowledge on, because it is our future. So either way, whether you want one or not, definitely look into it.
Okay, and Mary, I know that you definitely think this is an area that people should look at for future careers.
Yeah, I mean, just by the level of interest we're getting from crown corporations and enterprises, right? So if they're saying that they want something to augment their logistics system, like to Sarah's point, it's not going to replace it, but what it'll do, it'll just augment it. Just another way for them to get from one point A to point B. I think there's going to be a lot more companies that want to go up in the sky, to avoid traffic or whatsoever, to save time. So with that in mind, we'll need people to fly them. And to your point, also people to manage the air traffic within each of the cities as well. So I think there's going to be multiple of career opportunities stemming from that. And I think it's great for, for people and women in particular to kind of get into it.
It's going to be fascinating to see how air traffic control, how this kind of evolves, and if air traffic control is involved with it, or if that looks completely different. I'm really looking forward to this. Jeremy, final words from you. I know that Mary just said, women in particular, which is really interesting because, we didn't even really talk about, are there more male drone pilots and female drone pilots? But I mean, this is obviously something that you love. You started the drone program there, and you would encourage everyone to look at this as a career?
Yeah, absolutely. And I just want to mirror, I think Sarah covered it, is make sure you do your homework before you get into it. We're getting phone calls from the drones flying over the airport or flying into people's backyards. Like, just be responsible about it. Think of it more like maybe getting a car license. Don't just go out and buy one and just start flying before you even think about it. And there's nothing wrong with just calling a local flight center, or even call us at our police department and just ask a few questions before you get into it, if you don't know what the weight of your drone is, for example. And just a side note, if you see us out flying, I know you may not be from our region, but there's lots of police departments across Canada that have these devices. Come up and talk to us and say hi and just ask some questions. We're at a school a couple weeks ago just doing some flying and just some training, and we had a bunch of people come up to us and chat about the laws and regulations. So I know there's a lot, like this program and the whole drone program is expanding. Transport Canada is trying to keep up with the demand. There's a lot of questions out there, so please feel free to start asking those questions instead of just trying something yourself.
Okay. And you know what, Sarah, I have one more question for you to end on. This is from Christine, and I'm just curious what this is actually, so I want to ask you, how does the BVLOS RPAS industry feel about mixing with manned aircraft? Do they feel more stringent regulations are required, especially in uncontrolled airspace? Do you know the answer to that?
So BVLOS is referring to beyond visual line of sight. So we're talking
Thanks.
about having a pilot kind of at a different center, not sitting outside watching their drone. And again, this is where we need to get some sort of a traffic management in place. The drones need to have some sort of equipment on them to be able to detect these aircraft and know how to maneuver around them. Do they drop in elevation, or is there another aircraft down there? So, I mean, we're all interested in the same result, which is sharing the airspace, right? And finding out how we do that safely. No one wants to hit any sort of an aircraft with a human on board and have any incident.
Oh my God, no.
And nobody wants their drone to fall out of the sky and hurt someone either. So we're all trying to work towards this and trying to figure out a solution. So there's lots of working groups trying to figure out that beyond visual line of sight right now. Like Mary said too, there's a lot of trials going on that are trying different softwares and trying to find these solutions. So Transport Canada is working on it. They created a whole task force for drones, and they've come a long way very quickly, which is awesome to see, because transport can be slow in certain areas, and they've moved very quickly here.
What? No. Okay, well, that's great. Now I know what BVLOS is. I actually didn't know, so thank you for educating me on that. That brings us to an end. Charlene had a question about, she knows someone who wants a mentor. Please look at our website at elevateaviation.ca, and we can hook you up with a mentor through there. So please do that. Anyone else who wants to know more about drones, more about aviation in general, if you want, like I said, if you want a mentor, if you want to really have help to get into this industry, we have so many people, you can even see from this panel, so many people that are willing to talk about their careers and to help educate you on how to get into these careers. I personally think get into drones. There is a future in drones, that's for sure. So thank you all so much for being here and helping educate us on drones. And we will talk to you all again. Thank you all so much.
Thank you.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Okay, bye. Okay, goodbye, everyone. We'll see you in a couple weeks. I'm on vacation for a couple weeks, so we'll see you in a couple weeks, and we'll be back with Neil Wilson, the CEO of NAV Canada, and talk more about air traffic control. Till next time. See ya.
Bye-bye.
Bye.